We are closing off on the month of May, meaning that we are 1 month closer to NFL football, ladies and gentlemen. Couldn't be more excited, it's especially at this point in the offseason. But on today's video, we're going to be breaking down all of the NFC North teams and predicting their schedule. If you're sketchy, last year I predicted 10 of the 14 playoff teams and 7 of the 8 division winners. So if you're interested, tag along. Let's get into it. Starting off here with the Detroit Lions, I like to go in the order of where they finished last season. Today, a little bit of a caveat with one of the teams and how much they've been talked about this offseason. But let's kick it off here with the almost reigning NFC champions. As if they didn't rely on their analytical team, this is a Detroit Lions club and a team that could have made it and could have won the Super Bowl just last season. This is an offseason, or a team that went into the offseason with the mindset of let's run it back. They re-signed Jared Goff. They extend Amon-Ra St. Brown, Graham Glasnow, Penei Sewell, right? They brought in guys like Kevin Zeitler on the offensive side of the ball. But when we go over to the defensive side of the ball, this is where it gets scary because they got even better this offseason. They bring in a guy like Marcus Davenport, very underrated if he could stay healthy. You bring in DJ Reader, same story there, but this is a guy that was a borderline all-pro for his entire career there in Cincinnati. You bring in a guy like Carlton Davis. He could be your number one cornerback from day one there in Detroit. Now, sure, you lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson to Philadelphia this offseason. Not only do you lose a good secondary piece, but he goes to a rival at this point in time because of how dominant Philly can be here in the NFC picture in 2024. But in the draft here, this is where I think they're big winners because you get maybe the highest cornerback off the board in Terrion Arnold, and then you also get Ennis Rackstraw down the board out of Mizzou. This is a team that filled all of their holes this offseason. If you've been following the channel, Amir and I both believe this is a team that can win the NFC conference this season and maybe make it as far as the Super Bowl this season. They have it all. They just need to execute and stop relying on the analytic team as much as you did last year in that NFC title game, because ultimately that's what screwed you, right? But let's kick it off here. That's enough yapping, recapping what they did this offseason. I think they start off the year with a chip on their shoulder, and they start hot. Week 1, Sunday Night Football, I think they beat Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford's coming in with, a little bit of motivation of, I still got to beat the Detroit Lions. I haven't done it yet since I've been in LA. I got to get over that hump. I don't think it happens. Detroit is home. They get a big win there against the Rams. Then they knock off the Bucks, and then they go to Arizona on the road, and they beat the Arizona Cardinals. And look, now maybe if they didn't address their defensive backroom as much as they did this offseason, maybe I can entertain the idea that Marvin Harrison has a crazy game and Kyler Murray gets past this front seven. But they, again, addressed a lot of their holes. As long as the Detroit Lions are healthy, I can't see the Detroit Lions losing at their own game, which is dominating the ground, which is what I believe John Gannon and that club wants to do in Arizona this year, is to dominate the ground, the run game, and of course, open up the pass later. But Detroit, they address their flaws here, and I think they start the year 3-0. They go back to home here Monday Night Football after a nice long break here after a Sunday game against the Arizona Cardinals, and they take care of business against the Seattle Seahawks. So I say all that to say that in week 5, which is a bit of it's worrisome here for the Detroit Lions because they have an early bye week. Teams that typically have early bye weeks don't have a lot of playoff success, especially if injuries start to pile up. But at week 5, I do believe they go in at 4-0. Then you have some questionable games coming up here at the bottom half of your schedule. You come out of your bye week fully rested, but you go to Dallas. And Dallas, again, even though we like to make fun of them, and this is a team that last year wasn't able to beat a quality team outside of the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a Dallas team that is still very talented from top to bottom. And I think, again, it's a proven year in Dallas. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Parsons, all of these top coveted stars are chasing that big contract. And if they don't get it after next year, they're going to be free agents. But I believe they all want to stay in Dallas because money's good in Dallas, right? So all of them are trying to get that big extension. And in order to do that, you need to win some big-time games. I don't think Dallas has much playoff success, but regular season, they humble the Detroit Lions here in week 6. They get a big win. Of course, Lions, it's only your first loss on the season. You come out of that game pissed off. And what do? You knock off two wins in a row against 2 quality opponents. The Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota And then you beat Tennessee. Of course, they've revamped their team just this offseason. Now, Green Bay is a team that I can't see you splitting with in 2024. But again, I am a big Jordan Love guy. I've been a Jordan Love guy since he was at Utah State. I called his second half breakout last season. Big Jordan Love guy. But I will say you split here with Green Bay this season. You lose there on the road to the Packers. So at the midseason mark, if you're the Detroit Lions, what are you? You're 6-2. You're still probably top of the division. You're still pretty happy with where you're at. But trust me, it gets better if you're a Detroit Lions fan. You do go into the second half of the season, Sunday Night Football. You do play the Houston Texans. To me, it depends on if CJ Stroud is still going to be playing at the level that he was last year. Because I'm not expecting CJ Stroud to take a second-year leap. But if he does, it's going to be scary for other teams around the league, especially as a Browns fan, right? I don't want to see him this year if they put up 45 on us last year and he was a rookie. But for CJ Stroud, if this is a guy that kind of mellows out, kind of goes mediocre this year, then I could see the Lions winning this game as well. But the Houston Texans are a quality team. We don't get this matchup often. I'll have the Houston Texans picking up a big win at home Sunday Night Football. For the Lions, though, you start to figure things out. This is where you really start to catch your stride. You beat Jacksonville. You go to Indy, beat Indianapolis. I think Indy is a playoff team this year. And then you beat the Chicago Bears. Of course, Thanksgiving, Caleb Williams' first Thanksgiving, but the Lions have been there. They've done this. And this is a team that is ready for a guy like Caleb Williams. They're going to pick up 3 straight wins there. Again, the Lions, I think you're really, really good this season. Then you beat the Green Bay Packers the next week, it's a really weird layout here. Week 13, you have Thanksgiving. Of course, that's a Thursday. And then week 14, you also have a Thursday night game. They did that with every team that played Thanksgiving this year. And unless you had a bye week, you got basically a full week off here as you went from Thanksgiving on a Thursday to the following Thursday, whatever, right? They played the Green Bay Packers. You split with them. Buffalo, week 15, Sunday game. This is definitely a game I'm going to expect to get flexed out to a primetime outing, but I do believe the Lions are just the better team. I'm not a big Buffalo Bills fan this year. I think, of course, you have your quarterback, but if he's not Superman on a week-to-week basis, are you going to have enough help around him to make a playoff push, especially in that tough division? I'm not going to get behind that. But the Lions, I think you're a way better team. You get the win there. Sunday here against the Bears. This is a game where you can definitely convince me otherwise, right? Because I have them losing this game at Chicago Sunday night game, right? Against the Bears, where Caleb Williams at this point in the season has found his stride, rather, if there is any, right? And this team has the offensive firepower, where last year, with a, I guess, ideally worst quarterback in Justin Fields, you still split with a team like the Detroit Lions, and you were in both of those games until the very end. So ideally saying that you're the Chicago Bears, you're coming back with a way better roster. I think you could split here with the Detroit Lions. So the Lions, of course, you split with the Bears and the Green Bay Packers. Last 2 weeks of the season, these weeks are huge. Week 17 here against the San Francisco 49ers. To me, this game would be for the number 1 seed in the NFC, at least if my memory serves me right. You're in San Francisco against a team that's just as talented. And here's where I want to throw this out there, Detroit Lions fans. I have you losing the regular season matchup. In the postseason, I think I would favor you guys here. Of course, third time's the charm. And then for the Minnesota Vikings, of course, I have you picking up a win there as J.J. McCarthy would no doubt be the quarterback, whether if they're a good or bad team at that point in the season. So 12-5 record if you're the Detroit Lions, right where you were last year. But I always like to say this on the channel where your record doesn't always reflect how good you are as a team. Now, most times it does, and it gives you a pretty good, I guess, perception on how talented that team is. But if you're the Detroit Lions, you're a way better 12-5 than you were last season, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I still think the Lions might be my favorite to come out of the NFC. If not them, maybe a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. For the Green Bay Packers, last year, this team, again, got off to a slow start, and I came out before last season, and that was the highest viewed video of last year where I predicted this Packers schedule. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't because when I first dropped it, people were interested. It was after Jordan Love started to break out, and people knew I said it, that they came back to the channel, and I got lucky. Again, luck goes into this sports commentating thing. But a lot of people came back because I got the second half of the season pretty much perfect for the Green Bay Packers, and I predicted their quarterback breakout. Again, crazy pull for me. I got lucky. Let's see if we can do it again. In 2024, this is a team that made the playoffs last year. They were the first ever 7 seed to win a playoff game against, of course, the Dallas Cowboys. You lost Aaron Jones, longtime member of the franchise, but you brought in Josh Jacobs, who at this point in their careers ultimately is the better player. You lost David Bakhtiari to free agency, but David Bakhtiari hasn't been healthy really in 3 to 4 years. So you're not losing much, even though the potential is there with a guy like David Bakhtiari. But you got a ton of depth here on the offensive line in the draft. And of course, on the defensive side of the ball, the biggest transaction is bringing in a guy like Xavier McKinney from the New York Giants. Gave him a pretty big contract, so shout out to him. And he's going to help a big void here on the Green Bay Packers secondary. I don't think that helps here to start the season, though. I think it's going to be the same song and dance as last year. And this is a division where I think most teams are going to start slow and then they're going to catch their stride. For the Packers, you go to Brazil week 1 against the Eagles. Eagles have a lot more to prove this year than the Green Bay Packers. They're coming in with a chip on their shoulder. And ultimately, the Eagles have a better roster top to bottom. I think the Eagles get the first ever win in Brazil there against the Packers. And then the Packers go and they're back home. They're playing the Indianapolis Colts, and you should win that game. You're home against a team on your level and a team that has a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of reps under him. But I'm not in love with this Green Bay front seven. And for that reason, I think the Colts are going to be able to dominate the run game and get a win there on the road in Green Bay. The Packers would then fall to 0-2. But then the Packers, they're desperate. 0-2, they're going to Tennessee. You need a big win against a quality opponent. I think you can get a big win there against Will Levis. And not so much the fact that Will Levis is going to be a bad quarterback in that matchup. It's just going to be the fact that Jordan Love and this team is better in that matchup. So I know Tennessee really revamped their team this year, but I trust the Packers a little bit more than the Titans going into this year. But then for the Packers, you get a big win, and then, you come back down to earth again. I'll say it again. A slow start for the Packers here. You lose to the Vikings, which, again, I trust Kevin O'Connell. I love his work, especially as an offensive mind. And this could just be simply a fact that, look, the Vikings shouldn't beat the Packers this year at all. But the NFL is weird, and divisions are weird. And, of course, this could just be a big Justin Jefferson or big Jordan Addison game, and that could be all that the Vikings need to get the job done here against the Packers. So you lose that one, and, of course, you lose against the Rams in week 5. So it's not pretty here. You're 1-4 throughout the first month or so of the season. Can you turn it around? I think you can. You win 4 straight games, and hear me out. You beat Arizona at home. Okay, much needed win. Then you're home against the Houston Texans. This is a make or break game here for the Packers this season. Last year, I predicted this Packers team to go go into Arrowhead against Kansas City and win that game by 2 scores. And Jordan Love to have 300 yards. He did exactly that. For Houston, I think this is the same scenario as last year. Houston at this point, I don't believe, has a loss in my rankings or in my predictions. So they're going into here, of course, a little bit head over heels, going in to play Green Bay, a team that struggled early on in the season. This is where Jordan Love really takes command and says, it's time to get on my back. We're going to go and make a playoff run. You win that game at home. Then you beat Jacksonville and you beat Detroit. So you start off the season bad. But in a 4-week stretch, you beat 2 legitimate Super Bowl contenders and 2, arguable playoff teams in a 4-week stretch to end off the first half of the year. You go into your bye week at 5-4. Sure, we got off to a rocky start, but I think you're pretty happy if you're the Packers saying what you had to deal with at this point in the season. Coming out of the bye week, you come back down to reality. You lose to Chicago, again, splitting with the team on your level, losing the first game to a team on your level. You play San Fran at home. I understand it's home, but it's San Francisco, and I understand Green Bay had them on the ropes in the playoffs last season. But again, it's San Francisco. Hard to bet against San Francisco before the season. Miami on Thanksgiving. I like the Packers here, especially you're home against a quarterback that doesn't typically beat really good teams or at least above average teams in Tua Tagovailoa. If you're the Packers here, you're home and you get a big win on Thanksgiving, and that brings your record to 6-6 for the last 5 weeks of the season. How are we going to finish if you're the Green Bay Packers? Let's find out. I think you lose to Detroit. You split with Detroit this year. And from weeks 13 to 16, if you can see it here on the left side of your screen, This is a team that has 4 straight primetime games. You go Thanksgiving, Thursday night football, Sunday night football, and Monday night football. Absolutely insane. And I'm expecting week 18 to be primetime football as well, especially if the division is on the line. But you lose to Detroit here, and then you go into this last month of the season with a 6-7 record. How are we going to close? Again, if we're the Green Bay Packers, you win all of them. That's how you close the football season, right? You're 6-7. You need to win out. And I think you do exactly that. You finish the season just as strong as you did last year. You beat Seattle in Seattle. Again, Seattle's not the Legion of Boom anymore, but they're still a very, very good team at home. You get a big win there Sunday Night Football. You're home against New Orleans. At this point, is it Derek Carr at quarterback? Is it Desmond Ridder at quarterback? Excuse me, not Desmond Ridder. Spencer Rattler at quarterback. A lot of questions there in New Orleans. I don't like their coach. I don't like their aging roster, especially with the injury concerns. I'm not a big New Orleans fan this year. And again, I grew up being a secondary Saints fan because of Drew Brees. So that's not me hating on the Saints. I just don't believe in their team this year. I think they have a down year. So you get a win there against New Orleans. You beat Minnesota in Minnesota. And then you close off the year in a winning get-in situation against the Chicago Bears. The Bears, if you're here, you're probably really confident because the Bears get hot as well in my schedule. Spoiler alert. But if you're the Packers, I think you can get the job done. I'm going to give the edge to my favorite quarterback in that battle, Jordan Love, over Caleb Williams. And I'm going to say that the Packers at home in Lambeau, week 18, get it done in prime time. They advance to the playoffs with a 10-7 record. Again, similar to last season, right? But you're getting the job done if you're the Green Bay Packers. So not too shabby of a season. Again, up and down, but you got it done when it mattered. For the Chicago Bears, as you can see, I'm going to stick with this trend. I think this division gets off to a slow start to start the season. Now, if you're the Bears, you have Caleb Williams, you bring in Keenan Allen, you bring in Roma Dunze with the 9th pick in the draft. Okay, you bring in DeAndre Swift. You upgrade this offensive line on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, you re-sign Jalen Johnson. You bring in Kevin Byard. I think those are really the big moves I need to highlight. But that's really, you had a busy offseason if you're the Chicago Bears. And right now, I know there's reports that say that Caleb Williams went 8 straight plays with throwing interceptions without completing a pass. Look, it's OTAs. Even if that is true, I'm not worried about this guy. This is a guy in Caleb Williams that potentially could have been the first overall quarterback off the board in like the last 10 drafts. If you really want to go back in time and look at those drafts, he could have been the first quarterback on in every single one. Again, arguable, but that's the potential that Caleb Williams has, and that's what he's shown us as a football player. But here we go. Week 1, you get off to a rough start. You lose to Tennessee, maybe in a humbling fashion. But Tennessee, it's not a bad loss, right? They're a very quality team. They upgraded their roster. Will Levis starts out on the right foot on the road. They get a big win. But then if you're Chicago, it's not that you're running into bad opponents and you're just losing. You're running into quality opponents and you're losing. And in some of these cases, you're on the road. So for weeks 2 and week 3, weeks 2, you're playing Houston. Again, a Super Bowl contender this year. You're playing them in their house. Sunday Night Football, the first primetime game of Caleb Williams' career. You lose that one to C.J. Stroud. Then you go to Indy after getting beat up by Houston. Sunday game against the Colts in Indy. I like the Colts in that matchup. I like the Colts. Again, I'm a big Colts fan this year. So you start off 0-3. And then you go back home. Maybe you can pick up a win against a quality opponent. But no, you have a sneaky Super Bowl contender going to Chicago to play you in the LA Rams. I think you're facing a lot of quality teams to start the season. And Caleb Williams, being a rookie, adjusting to the speed of the NFL, you start off slow. 0-4 record, but I promise it gets better. Weeks 5 and 6, you do get wins against the Panthers, which I think the Panthers will be dramatically better this year. Maybe not record-wise, but team-wise, they'll be a lot better. Jacksonville in London. Again, second primetime game of Caleb Williams' career. He didn't get his first one done, but he gets the second one done against Sunshine. They get a big win there in London to go into the bye week at 2-4. Coming out of the bye week, I think that momentum carries on. So after 4 straight losses, you get 4 straight wins, including the bye week. You beat Washington in Washington, and then you go to Arizona. You beat Arizona in Arizona. Again, this is a Bears team, unlike last year, is a very complete roster top to bottom. And I think after Caleb Williams starts to catch his stride, this team could be a sneaky playoff team. You go into the second half of the season, and you won 4 straight games. You're home against the New England Patriots, a team that is not particularly good at this point in the season. Spoiler alert. But this is probably Drake May's first game. If not, it's probably still Brissett at the helm. Whatever the case is, the NFL is weird. Should New England win this game on the road in Chicago? No. Yeah, again, but upsets happen all the time. And for the fact that upsets happen, I'm gonna have New England going in and getting a huge upset win against the Bears, and that's gonna be a loss that is very huge down the stretch. For weeks 11 and 12, you bounce back with 2 key divisional wins at home, and you still go 2-3 in this home stretch. So I think you're still pretty happy, especially because after that 3-game home stretch, you have a 3-game road stretch against 2 Super Bowl contenders and a division foe. You on Thanksgiving, of course, I already spoiled this, but I think the Bears are going to lose that game. Maybe it's a classic. Maybe the Lions just win 24-17 or something. I think the Detroit Lions, they're just a better team. And of course, these 2 teams I think are going to split this year. And then in the last 5 weeks of the season, you have 3 road games, and 5 of them, all 5 games are against teams that could potentially, I could see the route to make the playoffs. Of course, you have 3 divisional games in your last 5 and 2 games against the NFC West. Let's see how those go. You beat the San Francisco 49ers. So if you're 4-4 at the midseason mark, and then you go after your first 4 weeks of the second half of the season, right? Weeks 10 through 14, you split those games as well. So you're still a 500 ball club throughout the last 5 weeks of the season. So what? You're 6-6 going into San Francisco. You win that game. This is the game where Caleb Williams goes into a competitor's house against a team that he shouldn't beat year 1. But this is the game where he gets it done. And even if the Bears don't make the playoffs, this is the game where he's going to go out there and have an amazing individual performance and get them over the hump. This is why he's going to prove he's the number 1 overall pick. Caleb Williams gets the job done against San Francisco. But then they come back down to reality. Again, the NFL is weird. You split divisions often. Here in the NFL, you lose to Minnesota on Monday Night Football. But then you bounce back. You beat Detroit. Again, you split with them this year. You beat Seattle at home on Thursday Night Football. And then that brings you to an 8-8 record. Caleb Williams, of course, mediocre season, up and down season, but you've had to face a lot of tough teams in a lot of tough stretches. You go week 18 against the Green Bay Packers. Winner-get-in situation, I spoiled it already, and you can see it on your screen. I do have the Packers getting the job done, but if you want to argue the fact that, hey, you believe the Bears are a more well-rounded team and Caleb Williams at this point would catch on to the NFL level things, they could get the job done? Sure, I can easily understand that. But let's just get this out the way. Whoever wins that Week 18 game is going to be my 7th seed in the playoffs. And whatever road you want to take, I'm okay with that. But 8-9 record for the Chicago Bears. And let's get into the last team here. The Minnesota Vikings, a team that lost a lot this offseason. And whether if it was by design, which it wasn't, because they offered a guy like Kirk Cousins a big contract to all the reports. Whether if that's true or not, well, that's remained to be seen. But they lose Kirk Cousins this offseason. You lose Daniel Hunter this offseason. So your captains on both sides of the ball are gone. You've already lost a lot of your veterans over the last couple of years on this defensive side of the ball, most notably a guy like Eric Kendricks, even though he was going downhill. You just lost a lot of veteran pieces on this Minnesota team. Now, you brought in Sam Darnold on a contract. He's looking to be the starter. You bring in Aaron Jones out of free agency. You bring in some offensive line help here, most notably a guy like Dalton Reisner, right? Of course, very talented guy there. On the defense side of the ball, you did sign Jonathan Grenard, again, a breakout year for the Texans last year, a Pro Bowler, if I'm not mistaken. You basically bring him in to replace your Daniel Hunter on the edge, and he's a lot younger, so he fits the timeline of this new Minnesota Vikings era. And then outside of that, Blake Cashman is okay. Shaquille Griffin was actually a bit of a big signing there for the Vikings. In the draft, though, they were kind of big winners because going into the NFL draft this previous runaround, everyone was saying if they want to get J.J. McCarthy, you have to trade up to get him. You have to trade everything up to get him to number 4, trade both of your late first-round picks, and go get your quarterback. But the Vikings were patient, and they played the board, and they were very, very smart as they waited for J.J. McCarthy to fall down the board, And whether if it was pick 9, 10, or 11, they traded up for their quarterback. And they didn't get rid of both first round picks. They traded up, they got J.J. McCarthy. And then at pick 15, they said, hey, we still got our pick 23. Let's go out there and trade up for pick 15 because at that point in time, maybe the best defensive player was still on the board in Dallas Turner. You trade up and get him. Very promising edge. He could be the defensive rookie of the year. So again, you lost a lot of veteran pieces over the last 2 years, but you've brought in a lot of young talent here to fit this new timeline of this Minnesota team. I will say this. This is a team this year where a couple weeks back I said they could borderline be a playoff team. I believe in Kevin O'Connell that much that whether if it's Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy at the helm with these offensive pieces and with how talented and young and underrated this defense is going to be, I said, hey, this is a team that could make some noise in 2024. Now, whether if their record reflects that or not, I think this is a team that's going to lose a lot of one-possession games, and some things are just not going to go their way. So Vikings fans, brace yourself for this ugly record. But again, I believe in your team this year. It'll be a lot of close games. And going into next year, you're going to be a team to watch out for, especially if JJ is as advertised. But outside of that yapping, you start the year off losing to a top 10 defense, potentially this year in the New York Giants. The Giants are loaded on the defense. Offense is questionable, but you're on the road in New York. I say the Giants get a win there. Then you play 4 teams that are playoff teams in my mind, and 3 of them that are Super Bowl contenders in my mind in San Francisco, Houston, and the New York Jets. You lose to those 3 Super Bowl contenders, but week 4, you get a huge first win of the season on the road in Lambeau against a divisional rival. So you go into your bye week, week 6, as a 1-4 record. Well, every other team in this division has got off to a slow start. Maybe this is a Vikings team that can replicate that. You start off with a win, at home against Detroit in week 7. Big upset victory against the Lions, of course. But that win's not going to carry over because you face the Rams in LA. You lose that one. You face the Indianapolis Colts. Again, big Colts fan. You lose that one. So you're 2-6 going into the midseason mark. Not what you really set out for if you're the Minnesota Vikings. The second half of the season, you go to Jacksonville. Again, a team that's very mediocre, but I think Jacksonville's a better team than the Minnesota Vikings. You lose that one in Duval. Then you play the Tennessee Titans, and this is where I think the Titans shouldn't lose this game. Let me clarify again. They shouldn't, but the Titans, again, the NFL is weird. Upsets happen. Being 2-7 at this point, the Vikings shouldn't win, but I think they do. You're at home. Maybe this is the first J.J. McCarthy game we get on the season. Maybe he comes out like Will Levis did last year and has some magic with this offense and of course, gets the job done. So, carrying into that win, maybe that carries over into the latter half of the season. Maybe you get hot. Maybe you can make a playoff push. But you lose to Chicago with Caleb Williams, who's found his stride. You lose to Arizona, who I think Arizona could be a good team this season. And then the last 5 weeks of the season, you're facing a lot of really good teams, as you can see. You're facing 3 divisional opponents and 2 NFC teams that can make the playoffs and probably, I won't say win their division for Seattle, but they have the talent to do so. So you're facing 5 really good teams, and I think you're going to go 2-3 in that stretch. Beating Chicago at home, and of course you beat Seattle on the road in 12th man. Now, Seattle, I don't have losing that many home games. I just kind of realized that I've had them losing 2 games here in this video to NFC North opponents, but still, of course, Seattle is still going to be a really good home team for you Seattle fans. But you close off the year with a 2-3 record, bringing your record. That is a false record. Of course, that's a little bit of an editing error on my part. I believe I have them at 5-12. We'll get into it here, actually, right here. My final predictions for the NFC North. Now, if any injuries happen from now into the season, I'm going to come onto the show and I'm going to address the schedule as need be. So, if you're a Lions fan, you could end up 14-3. You could end up 10-7. I lied. This is actually the floor for the Lions. So, if you're a Lions fan, you can end up with a better record. And same can be said for all of these teams. We're going to continue to adjust these records, but my general thought at the end of May here in 2024, this is where I have everybody standing. Detroit takes a playoff spot there. They win the division at 12-5. Green Bay sneaks into the playoffs like last year at the number 6 or 7 seed. They get a playoff berth. And then Chicago in that winning situation against the Green Bay Packers, week 18, you have a shot, but you just can't get it done. you're right outside the playoffs. And Minnesota, you're in a lot of games, but some games just don't end your way. You end off with an ugly 5-12 or 6-11 record. So again, not necessarily the best season for the Vikings, but you have a lot of potential and young talent going forward. And this is definitely going to be a buffer year in their rebuild or retooling, whatever you want to call it there in Minnesota. But that's going to do it here for today's show. We ran through all four teams, what they did in the offseason, what we can expect here going into 2024. If you're a fan of any of these four teams, drop a comment, man. Or if you're just an NFL fan, drop a comment. What do you think their records are going to be in 2024? I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to think, of course, or if I'm undermining a certain offseason acquisition for one of these teams. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts. I get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. But episode 178, we're on the road to 18,000 subscribers. We're knocking on the door. So if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. And until next week, where we tackle the AFC South, stay happy, stay healthy. Get out of here.